Hey, how's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Sinister of the Gamer section, bringing you another interview. And before I begin, if you're new to the channel, hey, just drop a like on this content, subscribe. With that out of the way, go ahead and let our guest introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Josh Sacco, and I'm creative director of Deadleaf Games. That's pretty much it.
All right, that's cool, cool. All right, just go ahead and get things started. Just go for the beginnings. Do you have having any favorite games growing up?
Yeah, Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, Soul Reaver. That
Uh huh.
was a pretty big one. A lot of action platformers, so Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, all the sort of PS1 generation type games, all the sort of classics. Medieval was another big one that I
Yep.
really liked. Yeah.
Yeah, those were the times of the '90s, especially with the PlayStation. And of course, Symphony of the Night's my favorite game of all time on there.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of good games, a lot of fresh ideas. Yeah.
Okay. I
Mm.
mean, yeah, just like discussed before we got on, I'll basically tell the audience where you're from, and
Oh,
mhm.
yeah, yeah. Oh, well, I'm from Australia, Melbourne. There's a pretty cool game dev community down here. Yeah, I sort of just grew up playing games, doing art and drawing, and I sort of like just fell into making games growing up
Okay.
um, in a game maker. So I started. That was like it's like it was a very early version to what it is right now. But the engine was just mostly 2D stuff. So as a kid, I'd sit there in like Microsoft Paint, you know, drawing everything like pixel by pixel, and then putting it in and sort of learning like code and art and like all the sort of game dev sort of things that way. That sort of eventually led to like a career in games. From there.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, when did you ever first created your first game?
Oh, I think this is a real long time ago, but I think it was like a Little Red Riding Hood in like a little cape, and you could only see the eyes in the hood, and it had
Okay.
like a little stick. So it was like a little like a Red Reaper, and you'd have to deal with all these little wolves.
Oh,
Um,
that's
yeah, yeah. But it was like a 2D side scroller. But yeah, that was one of my first ones growing up. But I just messed around with a whole bunch of them,
okay.
a few different genres and ideas. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. All right, let's get on to the meat and potatoes of it. Nom Nom Apocalypse. Yeah, just go ahead and explain away. What's the game all about?
Oh yeah, so that was my first game solo that I published. I'd been playing a lot of Binding of Isaac and Nuclear Throne and all that, and sort of wanted to make a casual version of that. So just like a 3D casual version, more like like a shoot 'em up. That was like
Right.
yeah, so just easy to do. And before I'd actually got into the game industry, I used to work at McDonald's. So like seeing all the greasy food, like that was sort of an inspiration for me. So when I made Nominal Apocalypse, I got the idea that like these over microwave muffins would start going around the city and eating everything, and then mutating into like these monsters. And then you, as like a hospitality worker, would have to like bear like a source gun and then go and stop all these monsters. So it's cool to make like hospitality sort of workers into like these heroes that would save the city. So it's good to like go into each culture and then like grab like a sushi chef or like a hot dog vendor or like like it was good to explore different foods. So I learned a lot about food. I learned a lot about all different things. And being my first game, it was tough. It took a lot of work, especially finishing it. I gave myself a 2 year deadline. Like it was I did the proper indie thing. So I sort of quit my job. Did it with a certain fund, and then yeah, sort of went out and did it. It was a good learning experience.
That's
Hmm.
cool. Yeah, after seeing like the game trailer of it, it's like The Walking Dead mixed in with food. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
fighting against zombie food and like things like that. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it was fun and challenging to do, and yeah, I'm glad I'd learned that, used that as my first game because I learned a lot, and it was yeah, like I think there's at least about 50 to 60 different sort of enemies in there, including bosses.
okay.
So yeah, it was fun sort of turning figuring out like monsters to do, and then turning it into like food, or turning the food into monsters, I should say. Yeah.
Oh, okay. What platform did you release this game on?
Just PC in the end. Yeah. Beyond that, I think the sort of COVID hit, and it sort of just affected the progress of like updates on other platforms, and I decided to just call it a day, and then just
understandable.
Yeah. Now we're sort of back at it, sort of 2 years later. So
yeah, it's understandable. Yeah, like I said, like before we came on the air, there was something else you wanted to discuss, like the
Oh
sequels.
yeah. So we're working on a new game, action adventure game. It's actually like a sort of dream game that I wanted to make. Growing up, working on playing, adventure games. I've always wanted to make one. But like obviously in this day and age, you can't just make an action adventure game. It needs to be something new because they've all been done. So we're working on this sort of action adventure game with a lot of Metroidvania sort of elements in it in a 3D world. So the game's called Junklands, and it focuses around like rubbish, recycling, that sort of stuff. So the world's like, the monsters are like made of trash, and each region has a different sort of like theme. So there's like a sewer theme, and then like a sort of like I guess like a mining theme and petrol theme in another area, and then you play as this like cardboard hero, going around to each area and sort of fixing it, sort of healing it and fixing it up, and then getting different abilities and powers along the way.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, when did the idea come about? Like, was it after you did your first game after Num Num? You just decided you had like other creative ideas after that?
I actually come up with the character 10 years ago and started a game with it. Like it was just a paper world, and sort of sat there, and like the concept of it just sat on my wall in front of me for the last 10 years. And I was like, maybe it's time to like explore this world. And I didn't really have any mechanics that I wanted to do at the time, so we sort of sat there, sort of developing it out. And then I had this idea with a shield. So like using the shield in various different ways, so like throwing the shield, blocking, just having the sort of mechanics and gameplay rely on this one shield and timing attacks and all that sort of thing. So we sort of like melded the two ideas together. So, what happens in this world when you've got this shield? So it's like, can you block like acid attacks? What can you do with the shield? Like, can you upgrade it? Like, how do you go about upgrading it? So a lot of ideas started flowing through that. So we've got like this sort of cool sort of theme going on, and then we've got this cool mechanic, and it's sort of just snowballed from there. And we're slowly developing it out, but it's still in its prototype phase. Yeah.
Okay. Are you working on this yourself, or are you just you have your friends helping you, things like that?
I started on it by myself for a year, and now we've got a small team, about 3 or 4 people working on. 4 to 5 people working on it now. Through development.
Yeah, that's cool. Like everybody has like an assigned role. Like say like someone's like doing the coding, someone's like doing like the music, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It just makes it a little bit easier to sort of like, because it's a bigger game, it needs more hands on deck. So it's been easier to sort of get everything running with more people.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have like a release date, or is it like in the like alpha phase, like in like kind of like pre-production, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say it's still in pre-production, so we're just sort of figuring out the prototype right now, because it's taken a lot of work to figure out a nice balance of like the levels and stuff. So we've got most of the mechanics down. We're just figuring out how to structure the level. So we don't really have a release date yet, but we're sort of working on it towards the end of the year. We'll sort of know where we're sort of going with the project, but it's looking pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. It's like one thing, like say this game was a major hit, like whatever platform it was on, PC, like console, things like that. Do you ever plan like DLC for it? If it ever took off?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I would like to expand on the worlds. I think there's a lot we could sort of do there. I definitely think we've got a lot of ideas where we're sort of picking and choosing which ones we want in the sort of project, and we sort of got some to the side where like we're not sure if this will fit in or not at this sort of point. So it'd be good to like have that for extra DLC or something. Definitely.
Okay, that's cool. It's cool. Yeah, about your company, Deadleaf. Well, when did that come about?
I think like for most of my childhood and like just in my spare time, like I've just constantly just made games in my spare time, and I think it's just like it's always sort of been there. Like I just had this like little autumn leaf as like my sort of like avatar, and like I just sort of used it from there. It's sort of just a place to put what I'm working on, pretty much. So like it's like I've been working the sort of commercial games industry for the last 10 years. So I've been always wanting to do indie things that, sort of scratch that itch. I can't always like, the games I sort of work on are like, either like IPs or like there's certain genres. So it's nice to be able to just like get home and then just work on something that's, that you can sort of like craft yourself. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's great. Yeah, like I said, going back to your first, creation, like Num Num, like usually I like the way it flows. Like, I mean, especially like people have like high end PCs, things like. I mean, it looks great. It's like one of those twin shooters. Like, I kind of grew up like playing those and kind of play some of those now. It's like, um, like any other genres you want to dive into other than okay, you covered this one, then you're working on like say like you're working on an RPG or you work like a horror game, in like something like that you want to play in your future, something like.
Yeah, yeah. I think the sort of style would be going down as like telling sort of like otherworldly stories or things, like non sort of human based stories. But um, I guess definitely around the adventure, like action sort of like genres is probably what I'd be sticking to at this point. I'd probably like to explore a first person sort of narrative adventure game, something similar to sort of like Portal or something,
Uh-huh.
maybe, like our take on it. But at this point in time, I think we've got a lot of adventure game ideas, and that's probably the path we'll go down. But smaller narrative like games of exploration, that's probably where we're going to sit. I think, yeah, we're like into like that sort of like environmental storytelling.
That's cool. Yeah, speaking of like anybody like on the team, like say like you have the idea for this game and like somebody else probably on the team probably have like, hey, I have an idea like this, like like I'm sure y'all have like daily meetings, like putting your ideas together. It's like like assigning like a different roles, like who knows what. Like
Yeah,
say like you got your game out, then probably somebody else may have an idea. It's like, hey, I want to explore this idea, and they probably take the lead and back each other up.
yeah,
That,
exactly. Like, yeah, it's cool. Like, it's really cool to sort of like work with other people and see what ideas sort of pop out as well. And then you sort of like, well, that's cool. Like, what about this? And that's sort of like what's happening with this game right now. It's like, sort of like these ideas start forming on top of each other. And then it's just sort of like the original concept is like not what it was. It's something way better than what it started with. Yeah, definitely.
okay. Yeah, like some of the characters in the game, like did they did you get inspiration from anywhere? It's like something like from real life or some probably you've seen before. It's like, hey, like, oh, that's probably a good idea. Throw it in there, like,
Yeah,
kind of fit your game's ideas.
yeah. I think I'm a big Tim Burton fan. Big Double Fine fan and stuff. Like I really like that sort of stylized art.
Mhm.
The rest of it's like grabbing like an idea and then sort of twisting it and like trying to mold two different things together. So it's like with Nom Nom, it was like grabbing 50s style monsters and then trying to make my own version of that. So like the
Right,
KG and sort of stuff. Like what would a big noodle monster look like? What would a bacon and egg Godzilla look like? That sort of thing. So it's grabbing an idea and sort of molding them together. But yeah, with the new game, it's sort of like we're looking at sort of like how do we sort of like in this sort of like Junkland, how do we make creatures that sort of fit that sort of narrative and sort of stuff? So we're looking at sort of like bugs and like lobsters and like crustaceans, like cockroaches, because like they would survive like in that sort of wasteland. So it's like sort of like look for like real life connections, and then you sort of build on it from there. Yeah,
yeah, because with Tim Burton movie, because I mean I enjoy some of his films. Like, of course, Batman's like one of my favorites.
yeah,
Of course,
yeah,
Beetlejuice.
yeah,
What was that? Corpse Bride. I
yeah.
mean, like from the way you're talking, is like, oh, even Nightmare Before Christmas, like the way you explain what the kind of creatures kind of reminds me definitely more of Nightmare Before
Yeah,
Christmas.
yeah. Nightmare Before Christmas is probably my favorite movie. So I grew up with that as a kid. So that sort of just followed me. I was like, yeah, I want to do like art in that sort of style, and even make games like towards that, leaning that way. That's not so much like knights and swords, but more like oddball characters.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, because like something like that probably like have like a horror theme or not more like a horror theme, more like a gothic, like kind of like blacks and whites and grays, that kind of style. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah,
that
yeah.
is that what you're trying to probably aiming for?
Yeah, I mean, like with Junklands, it'd be probably more browns and stuff. But like Nightmare Before Christmas, if you look at sort of a Hollow Knight, that's sort of got a
Right.
gothic theme. So like that's like that's sort of like that's where that would probably come from. But I think with Junklands, even though like Nightmare Before Christmas has been like a pretty big inspiration over the years, I'd still like want to develop our own style for the game. So it'd be a totally different sort of source of inspiration in that regard. But I sort of like take what I've learned from their sort of character development and sort of like learn from it and bring it over into our own style. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, since you mentioned like action adventures, like any influences, like favorite action movies or action heroes that you grew up with, like kind of give you an idea of, like the kind of style you want to bring to your games.
Well, I think it's more like the soft fantasy one. So I definitely like the '80s sort of like the Labyrinth. I thought was pretty good.
Oh yeah, David Bowie, yes.
Yeah. I like even like yeah. So I like the sort of like I guess when I say action, it's more like the sort of fantasy action. So it's like the sort of supernatural sort of style one. So I always like the sort of like non-conventional heroes,
Right.
taking up the mantle. Yeah. So I'm really interested in like not sort of like the big muscly sort of like die hard, sort
Right.
of like target heroes. It's more like the unlikely heroes, like Abe from Oddworld. He's like, sort of pushed into like this, scenario where he has to be the hero, but he's not quite equipped to do it. So he has to do it in his own way,
Yeah.
type of thing. Yeah. So I really like them sort of stories where it's like the underdog, the unlikely hero getting thrust into adventure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of cool not following the trends. Like that, like this trend is done. Like hey, it's like have like different twist to it. Like have like a different ideas. Like hey, like someone like never done this before. Dove into the world that probably don't understand. It's like trying to get them to understand like along the way, like kind of like a learning curve, like a learning experience.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. I found like I resonate with more like characters in movies and games where like they're not like these perfect sort of like people, they're flawed, and like you see them sort of overcome like these huge sort of boundaries, um, and shortcomings through like growth and like their adventure. So I feel like that's definitely cool. Not seeing like I guess to me like Superman isn't interesting. I feel like
Right.
someone like Peacemaker is more interesting because he's such a flawed sort of human being, and watching them progress and become like a better person is like really interesting to me, because you actually get to see the growth of that character, like going on their journey and becoming someone like way better than they were before, and like I really like that, and want to sort of translate that to sort of games and sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Like for me, like usually I get the idea like from Spider Man because like him being a teenager, and I guess like this idea from of course Stan Lee, like he wanted like a create like a teenage hero, like so like for teenagers, like not someone who's already grown up like Batman or Superman, like someone who can relate. And I mean
Yeah.
that's like he thought outside the box, like with Spider Man. He's just a normal guy. He gets picked on, he gets bullied, and then now he got bit by the spider. Blah blah blah. Of course, everybody knows the story. And then he gets his powers. Then he starts letting it go to his head, and then like he gets tired of getting pushed around. And
Yeah.
then of
Yeah.
course, then you see the flaws in him. Like he let the bad guy get away. He was irresponsible. So basically, that's something he had to learn like by experience. Like you
Yeah.
know, great power. Responsibility. That concept. Like
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. It's way like find it's way more interesting watching someone, um, like learn through trial and error. Like even in the new Batman movie, we're seeing like a young Batman who's like not really equipped to take on like the whole city yet. So we're
right,
watching him fail. Not doing proper like his fighting is not great. Like even Spider Man, like he's still learning how to swing, and he's still getting used to his power. And it's a way more interesting story. You can have funny bits, you can have sad bits. Watching someone actually learn and grow, I find is like really cool and interesting. And I think the challenge for us is trying to find a way to sort of put that in a game. And because like when you have a character, they sort of like learn abilities, but they don't sort of like you like the character itself does sort of change. It's you more as the player, sort of like gets better at the game. So we sort of have to like intertwine that with the character as well. And I think like Metroidvanias do a good job of that, where you
right.
start with like or even like Souls like as well. Like you start with like not much, but then by the end of the game, you have like all this knowledge. More power, so you're a more powerful person just from playing the game in that world. You sort of learned. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Speaking of that, you ever think about doing like a game like that, like in the future, like kind of like Souls, but not really Souls, like just probably the mechanics, like
Yeah. Well, our designer is a big. They're Hayden is playing Elden Ring right now, so like they're definitely into like them sort of Souls type games. So I definitely think it would be like something we could definitely explore. I reckon because like it just like them sort of games have like that sort of world and storytelling as well. So yeah, definitely think that that's a possibility.
yeah, because I never played those kind of games, especially like with for me like Ninja Gaiden on the OG Xbox, like seeing how
That
difficult it is. It's like trying. It's
yeah,
like I was like like, but
that
of
was
course, you find better ways to overcome these stumbling block the obstacles. Like okay, like hey, how to get past this boss or how to get past this area, without raging stuff like that. It's just like it's like you mentioned, it's trial and error. But yeah, basically with Souls like games, like I mean, especially like your character is like under level, under power. You don't want to go out there and fight this big uber creature who is like 30 levels higher than you. He take you out in one hit.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. Like I think for us, we try to like put accessibility in there as well, maybe as an angle, so people can sort of play it, on the like sort of normal hard setting. But then like other people would be able to enter that world maybe on an easier setting if they felt like they wanted to experience it like that. Definitely.
Yeah, that's kind of cool like that. Like for beginners, who never played those kind of games. Yeah, definitely start on the easy setting. Like for veterans or fans of that, they'll definitely put it on hard. Because they want that challenge. It's just really cool that given variety like options like for different kind of players out there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like I said, like going back to your first game, do you ever plan on doing a sequel to it?
Probably not. Like I think I got my fill of that at the time. Like I felt like I wanted to move more away from guns.
Mm-hmm.
Just to explore more interesting mechanics. Like if I felt like there was like an idea that the team thought was interesting with a gun again,
Mm-hmm.
then I'd probably maybe explore that. But I don't think a sequel we would. I mean, like originally I wanted to do like a more of an arena based style version of it, but just due to time constraints, it ended up being like a sort of random generated sort of level by level thing. But if we do a sequel, it'd probably be more of an arena based type thing. Yeah. That being
That's
said,
kind of cool.
I don't see us returning to it anytime soon. Yeah.
Yeah, because because usually when it comes to sequels, like people just like to pump them out like crazy. But usually you got some who like to take their time with us. Like, okay, yeah, this original was great. It was it was a hit. It was a modest hit. Then again, like over time, it's like you ever think about getting around to a sequel? Some may not. Same as like, hey, look, this is a one and done. Like, I mean, of course, I don't blame them. Like, certain things don't need sequels to them. Like, usually the way it's put out is just the way it's been put out. Like I said, it's just not following a trend, things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
But
yeah. I think we got a few ideas. So it just depends whether we want to go back to that world or whether we want to keep exploring new worlds. At the time, like this new project sort of taking up all our time. So yeah, you're exactly right. It's like a thing where you want to go back to that world. You can improve on like a million different things in the sequel to make it better. But it's like you've got all these exciting other ideas on the side that you wanted to explore. So it's sort of like just deciding where your time's going to go. And it's also a business decision as well, because obviously,
right,
your time is money, so you have to decide whether it's going to be profitable or but also it's like a creative thing, like, what do you want to do with your time? So it's like all
right.
these things that you sort of have to think about when, doing a sequel or doing a new project. It's like you sort of have to look at something and go, well, is this going to be good for the sort of like company going forward, good for the people,
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, that sort of thing. So there's all these other factors.
Yeah, because speaking of like the Steam, like you dropped your first game on there. It's like do you always enjoy like dropping your project on Steam first to see how it is, like how through their program that they have, and to see how it how it take off from there.
Yeah. So it's like, I guess for me it was like a learning experience, because like prior to sort of this in the industry, I'd only just been like working as an artist at a company. So it was like a big learning experience, like learning how to do marketing, learning how to like deal with launches and all that sort of stuff. So I definitely like was happy that I got through that first game to like learning all these things to take with me along this path for the new projects we're going to be working on now. So yeah, definitely like dropping something on Steam was definitely a big learning experience in terms
Okay.
of that. But yeah, I definitely recommend other devs to like get a game out and experience that, because there will always be more projects. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because with Steam, like say like the business, you can take off. Like of course, like you ever expand like your team, like to say like you want to move on to the consoles, for example, along with with Steam with the PC crowd. Like, do you ever think about putting on other consoles too?
Yeah. I think if we have the manpower to do it, then we'll definitely like look at putting it on consoles. I did like when we did do a show back in 2018, people were asking to like play it on Switch, but we just like didn't. I just like after like the pandemic hit, I just like didn't have the ability to actually do that. So that's like it's unfortunate, but I wouldn't rule it out for the future. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's also great.
Mm.
Oh, all right. That's pretty much all I have for you. But yeah, like before we go out, like yeah, it's like do you have like any contacts, like anybody want to follow you, like Twitter or Instagram, like any of the like social medias you want to get out to everyone?
Yeah, just follow us on Deadleaf Games on Facebook or Twitter. We'll be posting updates with the new game. You can sort of follow it there, and like I basically talk to anyone. So if you want to give us your opinions or anything, like that's fine too. So like happy to hear them.
All right. Well, everyone, that concludes this episode of an interview with the dev. Like I said, this is Sinister the Gamer Session. You can catch me and KANO like this on every Sunday, with the podcast. But other than that, that concludes our show, and thank you for having us interview you, Josh.
Thanks for having us. It was really fun. Thanks.
All right, y'all. Be easy.
See ya.